Definitely. This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV on YouTube. Today we have a returning guest. He is the president of Shoot Pro Wrestling, the new submission grappling federation, about to start airing episodes soon. UFC Hall of Famer, former UFC welterweight champion, founder of Miletich Fighting Systems, none other than Pat Miletich. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, brother. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you on, and an honor. Before we get into this, it's interesting because Matthew Granahan, who's also involved in the Shoot Pro, the King of Connecticut, he told me before coming on here you wanted to address something, and it's interesting because you have been falsely reported on, and I have a MMA coach friend in Canada that as soon as he found out that I was interviewing you, he said, "Oh, be sure to stay away from this. It might be a touchy subject with him." So this friend of mine had bought the story full on. Since then, they've put a retraction, and I'll just share the screen here for the retraction. It was MMA Junkie that that did this story on you, and I'll go in on the retraction. They go ahead and they post a mugshot, but then they put in quotes in italics. A previous version of this story said Miletich had been arrested again. However, the Scott County, Iowa jail case number indicated his Friday arrest is the same as his previous sentencing case. His appearance in a fresh Scott County booking mug from Friday was just procedural. So, what do you have to say about this? Oh, you might be frozen. Hold on here. Horrible time for him to freeze, but he's smart enough to. There he is. You just froze up for a second there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So you
No,
saw the
a lot of people are
retraction
aware that
there.
I had an out. Yeah. Well, a lot of people are aware that I've had a battle with alcoholism in the past. I've been sober for 2 years. I had to serve a 30-day sentence and deal with all of that. And that's just the way it is. I'm very happy to be 2 years sober, and on top of that, a lot of great opportunities are coming my way, and so that's really what it comes down to. I mean, I'm very lucky as well to have a who's now my business partner, one of my business partners, Doc Will Spencer, who finally correctly diagnosed me. I had brain parasites for apparently quite a long time, wasn't aware of it, and so he was able to treat that, get rid of the brain parasites. And then my good friend and another business partner who is a mindset coach and hypnotist worked with me quite a bit, reset my subconscious, a lot of the past trauma, things like that. And an amazing guy, world-class mindset and hypnotist. And then, of course, working 12-step program and stuff. So I've taken accountability for all of it. But all the stories that just recently came out were completely false, of course. And that's articles written by the same people that have had a vendetta against me since God knows when. I think they started coming after me in 2016. So it is what it is. That's their mental illness that they have to deal with, and you don't have to be a drunk to be sick, obviously. But either way, it's all in the past. Again, beautiful things are happening in my life, and that's what's important.
Yeah, and a lot of us have had issues like that, including me. But and wrestling, and it seems like the older school MMA guys were a different breed, and they were more they would fight hard, but they also had the other side to them, the drinking and partying side. It seems like it's not as much like that anymore. What do you think the change is?
I don't know if it's not like that anymore. I just think that again, um, for me in particular, finding out, and it's hard to explain when you really research, which, I'm a cellular health guy, I'm a DNA repair guy, I'm focused on mitochondrial function and gut health, things like that. My nervous system expertise always pertained to how to damage a person's nervous system. So I've never been a nervous system expert, but when you really dig into it, after I got diagnosed, and then it literally took 10 days from all my anxiety and depression to go away that I suffered from for years, and finding out that it was parasites and the toxins that they give off as well, causing me all my problems, that most all mental health issues, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, most seizure-related illnesses, all of it can be attributed to, if not all, certainly a large amount, to brain and nervous system parasites. So I was always focused on health, but I never was ever exposed to this part of human health and performance. And now that I have it's probably saved my life, to be honest with you.
Very interesting. How do you pick up these brain and nervous system parasites? Through food?
It can be through pork. It can be through, I traveled all over the world as well, for many years. So who knows, eating food, in an alleyway in Asia or in Afghanistan or Qatar or any of these Middle Eastern places that I've been in, who knows? But either way, now that I'm aware of it, it's, that's something that like I said, it was a very tough experience to go through and not understand why I was feeling the anxiety and depression that I was suffering from. But having the solutions, it can change people's lives. Let's put it that way. And that's the role I have to serve now. After going through it, my job is to make people aware of it and hopefully help them. And the methylene blue, the product that I was put on by Dr. Will Spencer, is a totally different level, quality of methylene blue that has a unique carrier to get it into the nervous system and brain cells. And so it's not the industrial level that most people are selling out there. So,
are you aware of NAD therapy yet, or have you tried it? Because that's for cellular repair as well.
What's it called?
NAD. I'd have to look up exactly what that
I've heard of it.
stands
Yeah, and I'm aware of it. I've researched some of it. Also, the methylene blue reacts very well with real red light laser therapy if it's a high grade system, which Doc Will Spencer also treated me with, which is his unit is like $40,000, so it's a little different grade than people are generally picking up online. But
or have you seen the ones at Planet Fitness, which is the one that I use? Is that doing me any good at that level, using those? That's like a tanning room, but it's red light therapy. Is that doing me any good?
I don't think it's going to hurt you any.
Okay.
I'm not aware of the quality. I really haven't researched the sauna units, but a lot of people have said really good things about them. So I'm assuming it's certainly probably helping you.
As far as shoot pro wrestling, I know you've already recorded numerous events with Jake Shannon, King of Connecticut. I think Gerald Briscoe has been involved with it. What's the update on everything that's going on with it, and how is everything going as far as when you're ready to launch?
Everything's moving along really well. We have some talks going on with an organization and a group, as far as there's going to be a lot of funds coming in, infused into the operation. There's some twists that I talk, not at liberty to talk about right now, but it's really going to shock a lot of people what's coming, and I'm super excited about it. It's all about basically reversing the clock in terms of sport and athletic events, in terms of combat sports, right? So when we go back to number one, just shoot pro in itself, and catch can matches are going to be a whole different level of animal. Look, grapplers in general are superhumans, right? Even the people that are blue belts and white belts who've been doing it for a while, compared to other humans, are superhuman, right? But when you put in the pin or submission, fall or submission system, you can't lay on your back and play the guard game. And so that changes everything. And it basically weeds out the people who are not, the pedigree of monsters that we're going to be, highlighting in Shoe Pro. So there's a whole different level of monster that's coming. And that's going to not only physically, but intellectually, and also just the technical side of it, and the action, the pace, the endurance, the explosiveness, all of that you see in Olympic level wrestling, as well as the finesse and the beauty of submission grappling, all of it combined in one makes it's the king of the mountain, period.
Yeah, I always think about the guard because I was a bouncer for almost 20 years, where people brag a lot about jujitsu, but you don't want to be on your back in a street fight. So I'm glad that you're adding that pin to things, because I wouldn't want to be on my back more than 3 seconds in a street fight personally.
No, and that's something, I used to do a lot of security work and had to defend myself a lot in those situations. And in a street scenario situation, where, as opposed to the cage, where if I'm fighting a guy who's a world-class striker that I'm a little nervous about, that I want to wear down first. Yeah, I'm going to go out. I'm going to maybe exchange with him a little bit, set him up, put him on his back, rough him up, wear him out, and then, finish him however I want. You can't do that in a street application situation, because you just don't know what's coming, who his friends are, where they're at, all those types of things. And so just the same, that all these years of 25 years of training, law enforcement and military, a lot of the military and law enforcement situation, if they're being overpowered, the street scenario situation, but it's even worse when you've got all the weapons on your belt that they can take from you, right? So it's all about staying on your feet, staying mobile, keeping your head on a swivel, and surviving the situation.
When you had to do that 30 days in jail, did people pretty much leave you alone? I know you probably weren't in a maximum security place or anything, but was there anyone that ever wanted to test you in there or anything, knowing that you were kind of a celebrity? Particularly in Iowa, you are a huge celebrity in Iowa.
No, nobody messed with me at all, and it's sad actually that the vast majority of the people that are in jail today in America, I've, found out, I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize how bad, are there because of methamphetamine related charges, whether it was any kind of violent act or stealing or dealing or, so, that's something that is absolutely destroying our country. And it's very sad. I mean, alcohol is horrible enough, but yeah, the methamphetamine stuff is really bad. But there were people in there on murder charges and things like that they didn't mess with me at all. They stayed away from me.
You're talking about conditioning, how important conditioning was when you were fighting, how you'd wear someone down. How important was conditioning to you, and what did you do for conditioning in general in your own training, as well as when you were training other fighters to get in the cage?
Well, I mean, first, the thing that people need to understand is that and it really means, you have to understand the food that you eat is important, but you're never going to get enough nutrients, enough real minerals in the form that they have to be in. You're not going to get enough of the soil-borne or the diversity soil-borne microorganisms or probiotics, which people call them these days, which are responsible for converting any toxins into beneficial nutrients, as well as, converting substances in your body, nutrients, into actual, B vitamins, for instance, right? So people are taught to be wary or afraid of strep, staph, of a lot of vilified E. coli, vilified microorganisms, when in reality, when they're in balance, because you have enough nutrients and you're not full of synthetic chemicals and heavy metals, that all of those organisms are supposed to be there in balance, homeostasis, to create the proper health and the balance within your body. And so Americans have been miseducated so severely on that. So anyway, I can't put the rigors and demands on an athlete, or, you know, when I was full-time coaching, that wasn't able to withstand it. And there's a lot of people psychologically that can't handle it. There's a lot of people that physically can't handle it, or they don't want to go through those levels of sacrifices to get to the top. And so it's so important when I talk about, you know, everybody uses the proper fuel in a race car. That's literally it, but it has to be colloid forms of minerals. So when metals work their way into the soil from the crust, the rocks of the earth, you have to have the proper microorganisms to digest those metals and convert them to carbon bonded minerals, which are then what are called bioavailable for plants, animals, humans, insects, whatever it may be. So in that form, that's what creates superhumans, right? And so those are the substances that we work with, whether it's in agriculture, gardening, orchards, soil reclamation, hunting land, you know, any of those types of applications, and then in regards to human health as well. So it's best way to explain it is the earth is one big organism, and the earth is supposed to, the soil should have, you know, 60 plus essential minerals, which transfer into the plants that are either eaten by the animals or eaten by us. And that's how the transfer of real nutrients goes through the food chain. Of course, you know, conventional agriculture through its chemical applications has basically mass murdered 1 billion acres of our soil. So that's why when you look around at Americans everywhere around you, that's why we see the massive amounts of obesity, the illness, the deformations, the hormonal destruction, mental destruction, and all of it, right? So that's really what it comes down to. You've got to be able to understand that. And that's what I did for years with my athletes. And I've talked to coaches who used to ask me what it was I was doing for my athletes because they couldn't figure out how we had so much endurance. Well, that's what I was doing. And some of the coaches that I used to coach against were like, that's okay. That's why you guys were able to do that to everybody. So that's the key. And that's what I do with athletes. I do that. I did that for years as well with tier 1 operators in the military and a lot of other world-class athletes. And we still do that with, you know, world-class athletes in Major League Baseball and soccer, NFL, you know, things like that.
And is this supplements, or is this just getting their diet right to make sure they're consuming this in the right form?
So no matter what, I mean, there's a way to grow food where you're going to get nutrients out of it, high-grade nutrients. But across the country, there's really no diet that you can have where you're going to suddenly become, you're going to improve your health if you're eating correctly. But you got to understand that 95% of all of our food is grown with synthetic chemicals, NPK fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, you know, all of these warfare chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and in the pharmaceutical industry, you know, those things, those synthesized substances come from coal tar and petroleum. And they're just not in a natural form. So it's not going to necessarily, it's not going to benefit a human organism to put those things in us. So conversely, when I say 95% of all of our food is grown with that, well, all of our supplements used to come from real sources like berries and fruits and other vegetables that were concentrated, micronized into capsules and other things like that would benefit you because you were getting massive amounts of nutrients and cleaning the toxins out of your cells and things like that. So only 5% of all supplements in the market today come from real organic, you know, substances, plants, things like that. So everything else is made in a laboratory. I'm not saying that they're all junk. I'm just saying that they're not natural. And so us being biological organisms, natural biological organisms, when you put unnatural things into the body, you're going to have adverse, you know, effects most of the time, eventually, one way or another. That's why there's side effects from pharmaceutical products, because that's a form of inflammation basically taking place in your body and telling you, educating you that you're being injured by what you're putting in your body, right? So, yeah, I don't call what we do supplements. There's better words for it, I guess. But for right now, we'll use the word, yes, supplements that are all natural, that come from sources around the world that are the most nutrient-rich substances that we can find on the planet. So that's what I've done for 38 years, is sought out the sources and deposits of the most nutrient dense substances that I could find.
What would you consider a good pre-workout, if anything? Because I'm sure you would be totally against the kinds that you would find in a GNC.
I mean, if you want to go crazy, have a cup of coffee with our fulvicumic acid in it. You're going to charge your mitochondria, which is the furnace of the cell that generates massive amounts of energy. So when you feed it the colloid forms of minerals and the essential fatty acids that you're supposed to have, you're going to turn your mitochondria into a supercharged motor into your cells. And when you times that by billions of cells in the human body, it's not like caffeine. You just have massive amounts of endurance and you can go and go and go. And then your recovery is super fast, as well as the efficiency of burning oxygen in the cells so that you're not building up lactic acid, which, look, you know, that saying, fatigue makes cowards of men, is very real. So I don't want people to, number one, well, I want people to be able to recover from their workouts correctly. So that's the thing, is torturing human beings to make them superhuman. They have to be able to come back the next day and do it again. And they have to do it for 8 to 10 to 12 weeks getting ready for a fight, or, you know, whatever event it is, or a football season, or, you know, an ultra marathon that's 100 miles, or, you know, triathlons and things like that. So that's what this is about. And people wonder why there are genetic freaks out there, but more times than not, the people that have the right substances in their body, who are willing to do the work and the fundamentals, are the ones that are going to win. That's just usually how it goes.
Are you still training anyone directly for fighting, or are you training anyone for the Shoot Pro from your area?
Say that again. You cut out. I apologize.
Oh, sorry. Is there anyone from your area? I don't know if you're still in Davenport, Iowa or not, but is there anyone that you're training specifically to compete in Shoot Pro?
I'm not doing any real coaching anymore. I mean, I'll still do seminars. I'll still do seminars, still, you know, train military folks or anything like that. But I don't coach professional athletes really anymore. I will advise them if they want to consult with me, no matter who they are, what type of profession they have. I still do consulting for people on what to put in their bodies, whether they just, you know, want to enjoy their life again and get their health back, or if they want to be a world-class athlete, or, you know, win a world title in MMA or Shoot Pro, or you know, any other combat sport. You know, certainly we'll do that.
This is kind of a funny question, and I don't know how close you followed pro wrestling, but this guy wants to know where you would classify the Hands of Stone, rugged Ronnie Garvin as far as hardest punchers. Have you ever heard of him? He
I've
was
heard of
known
him. I
as the.
haven't seen him. I haven't seen him yet. But so
Okay.
you fill me in a little bit on Ronnie.
Oh, he was a tough guy, but he was known as of Hands of Stone, and he had a punch that would knock people out. But it was pro wrestling, so he. I'm sure you haven't seen
I
it.
get it. I get it.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe if
I
he had
was heavily.
stopped by your
I was.
dojo.
I was. No. But you know, like the eras of pro wrestling. There's two eras of pro wrestling. You know, when superstar Billy Graham and a lot of the Crusher, the Bruiser, you know, a lot of those guys back in the day, Dusty, the original Dusty Rhodes, you know, all those guys when I was a little kid. Massive fan of all of that. And then, you know, the Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan era, you know, I loved it. And Roddy was my favorite, and God rest his soul. Great guy. I was lucky enough to meet him one time at a UFC and talked to him for a while at a restaurant. We sat down and talked, and that was like one of the highlights of my life, being able to meet Roddy Piper. So.
What do you think about how much the relationship between amateur wrestling and WWE has changed over the years? Because now it seems they're actually scouting NCAA events and recruiting directly out of that, whereas in the past it seemed like amateur wrestling didn't want any association with pro, and kind of looked down on it in a lot of ways publicly, even though a lot of amateur wrestlers got into it because they were pro wrestling fans.
I think it's great that amateur wrestlers have an opportunity, and a lot of opportunities, especially with Shoot Pro now coming on board or online and as big as it's going to get, that we have the opportunity to give amateur wrestlers another outlet on top of MMA and on top of pro wrestling, where they can come in and compete for real. There's a lot of amateur wrestlers out there who are the greatest athletes on the planet who are not cut out for pro wrestling. They're not theatrically driven. Might even not be athletically capable of doing some of the stuff, obviously that pro wrestlers are able to do. Pro wrestling is, I can't really think of something that is actually harder than pro wrestling at the ever. Not to mention the amount of days on the road and the pounding that their bodies take. I have a lot of respect for those guys. But there's, not every amateur wrestler world class is cut out for MMA, and certainly not cut out for pro wrestling. So if they want to learn the submission game with their athleticism and their explosiveness and their endurance and all of those things, fast twitch muscle that they have, those are the people that we want. Those are the monsters that we want, because I would certainly entertain taking world-class wrestlers and teaching them the catch as catch can and some jiu-jitsu, and blending that in with their uncanny, athletic abilities and explosiveness, to really help round out their game and turn them into monsters. But gyms are going to be built there, and their gyms are already being built for many years now with catch as catch can style grappling fundamentals taught in them, because that's the scariest human on the planet, is a guy that knows the submissions and how to take you off your feet at any time he wants.
Very true. As far as Hulk Hogan, I don't know if this is even still happening because I never heard anything, and I now know that Hulk Hogan's health isn't very good, but they had announced a professional amateur wrestling league that was supposed to start at the end of August. Several wrestlers were under contract, including Ben Askren, who I don't even know what his health status is right now. I believe he needs a new lung due to his staph infection. But
yeah, that's heartbreaking stuff with Ben. But the other organization, as far as helping amateur wrestlers make money, more money, of course, doing it quote unquote professionally. That's great. I think it's awesome. I think what we're doing is different. Obviously, we know what we're doing in our world. We know wrestling. Obviously, we know submissions very well, and we know how to entertain fans. Right. So that's really what this comes down to. And I think that people are going to appreciate what we're doing immensely once they see it and understand that I don't know the best way to look at it. Look, this is the style, for those that are familiar, that filled, the stands, 60,000 to 80,000 people at state fairs, when the Terrible Turks would roll in to go against Farmer Burns and guys like that, right? So that's what this is. This is the real McCoy.
yeah, and I think people want to see more a submission finish. And unlike where grappling can get boring, is if people are on their back for minutes at a time. That's when I usually flip the channel, that you're having the calling up rule. So I think it's a little more sadistic in a way with the submissions in amateur wrestling, and this might be a little bit more fast paced, I guess, than a typical amateur wrestling match or submission grappling match.
It's going to be, because of the options of pin or submission, it's going to be extremely fast paced. People are going to have to force the action to get off their backs, get out of trouble, fight off a lot of submissions with people on their back. And it's hard to explain until you see a couple of world-class guys going at it with a lot of money at stake, with submissions and falls involved. it's going to grow so quickly, and the fact that we can do, the tag team matches, which we used to do down around in Iowa, we would do in the early 2000s, 2000, 2001, 2002. We were doing as many as 3 and 4 guys in tag teams with all my world champions, Matt Hughes, Tim Sylvia, Jens Pulver, Jeremy Horn, all of those guys. We would do that just for the fun of it, to entertain the crowd at fight nights and stuff like that, because we were all of us were in the UFC, but that allowed us to entertain the local fans in Iowa and stuff. And the fans loved it. They loved it a lot more actually than most of the fights.
I heard that you would send your fighters, and I don't know if this is true, but like back in the early 2000s, there was bars in Iowa that had like amateur MMA, and they could challenge the guys that were trading with you, and you would just send your guys there for the extra practice to fight these guys off the street, and they would all get destroyed. Is there any truth to that?
Well, it wasn't really people off the street. It was more, just Eastern Iowa had a lot of MMA gyms at the time. And guys would travel from all over the Midwest to compete in those, right? So that we even had the amateur world championships. Monty Cox would promote those where, there was 40 fights in one day, and I would referee all of them, as a matter of fact. And, that way you'd have brackets. Back in the day, they could fight, less time each fight, but they could fight over a weekend and win an amateur national championship. But on the amateur nights, there was a lot of the smoker style boxing with headgear and 16-ounce gloves, things like that, where, if I get wrestlers who would come to me, I want them to be in front of a crowd. I want them to be in a setting where they're learning. 16-ounce gloves and headgear, reduces the risk immensely of somebody getting hurt, so to speak, where they can get, the stressors of the lights, the cameras, and a crowd screaming at them, and be forced to stand up and strike and not depend on their wrestling prowess to survive something. Just trial under fire, right, to give them experience. And I used to do that a lot.
Very interesting. I guess the rules were a little bit more slack back then, I guess, for running amateur fights in bars and stuff. Was there less commissions observing that type of stuff in
Well, no,
Iowa
it wasn't that. These were highly regulated fights, and controlled. The people that were refereeing, the people that were judging, the athletic commission people, or ringside doctors, ambulance on site, all those things. But it was a way for people with less experience or no experience who had been training for quite a while to get in there and at least, right, under safe, a really highly actually controlled environment where, it wasn't just a free for all, and getting people hurt. That's not what it was about. It was about getting people experience and working them from the very bottom of competition level, and slowly bringing them up. If I'm training a fighter and I'm managing a fighter with a team of people, I want that fighter to gradually increase in level of competition, which is not always the case many times in MMA today. A lot of guys I've observed will get a padded record to get into the UFC, and a lot of guys are getting into the UFC very early in their fight careers. And most of the time, those guys get chewed up and spit out and regurgitated back into the local market, where it's very difficult for them to make it back to the UFC. They have to do a lot of work to do that. So I want a fighter's experience to be one where I can somewhat control his safety. I can make sure that he is in the type of condition that he's not going to get tired in a fight and get hurt, that his technical abilities, his knowledge are up to speed for that particular level that he's competing against. And then each time bring up the level of competition a little bit more each time, until by the time he goes into the UFC, he's ready actually from that point on to chase a world title. I was never throwing people into the MMA UFC level without expecting them to do well.
Am I just crazy, or does it seem like around the time that you were competing and coaching that there was more like name level fighters in the UFC that everybody knew, like Tim Sylvia, Matt Hughes, GSP? Like overall, it seems like there was more names that like your average person on the street would know, and you'd hear people talking about it at the gym. Whereas now it seems like there was kind of John Jones and Conor McGregor as the main people like your average person would know, and just the rest of the card isn't as known as much. That's kind of what I'm noticing, but I might be
Yeah,
wrong on that one.
no, you're not incorrect. I mean, the market got saturated by the UFC shows, literally every week, um, and with a stable of I think around 700 fighters, cycling that many athletes through, it can be a little confusing. In my humble opinion, believe that probably half of those athletes don't necessarily belong in a televised career yet. When I look at fundamentals and quality and things like that, I've got a pretty high standard, and so the guys that you saw in the UFC when there was 12 shows or 20 shows a year max type situation, the only guys that were on TV were generally pretty quality for the most part. Excluding real early days when a lot of those athletes, were not cross training, were not world class athletes and things like that. But yeah, we have to remember there used to be massive house parties and all that sort of stuff to watch pay-per-views, and everybody was getting it at their local bars and all that sort of stuff, and all the local crowds were gathering to around the country to watch those events. And that's when you oversaturate a market and you throw a lot of athletes in there that maybe aren't quite ready for that level, you're going to get sometimes some subpar stuff. And even the pinnacle of the sport, the UFC, has some opponents or some athletes that maybe aren't quite ready for prime time, so to speak, I guess.
What was it like in those days? Because I remember everyone was talking about Miletich fighting systems back around 2007, 2008. I mean, you were pretty much the top trading center anywhere. You even had Brock Lesnar try out with you guys. What was it like being like known like that worldwide?
Hey, it was great because a lot of people would call up and say, "Hey, we'd like to come and train." I'd ask them, you know, what their records were, what their experience was, that sort of stuff. And there were a lot of people that would come from around the country and around the world just to do our basic classes, our basic grappling, basic striking classes, things like that. But as far as fighters, we had fighters coming from Asia and Europe and South America and things like that. And so I thought it was great because it gave quality training and different looks to my athletes. And it, overall, I think raised the level of MMA around the country and around the world because people would come away from it saying, okay, these guys, the room's always 95 degrees. Every guy that I grab is ranked in the top 10 in the world because we had, 40 to 50 guys at one time ranked in the top 10 in the world in the same room in all the different weight divisions. So no matter who you grabbed from my team, you had a world-class athlete that was constantly on the attack. And so when you don't get a rest and you don't get an easy opponent for an entire practice where guys were coming, maybe they were the big fish in the little pond before, they were able to coast probably a lot of times at their home gym where when you're, training with Matt Hughes and Rob Lawler and Jens Pulver and guys like that and all the rest of the crew that you could pick from, if you have a remotely bad day or even if you have a good day, you're still for the most part, you're going to get your ass handed to you every night, and so that's just that's the way it is. So, but it was great for my team to have guys come in that, were good athletes and good fighters who would come in and train with my guys.
Was there kind of like an initiation? Because I would imagine I trained at the dungeon and wrestling, which was nothing compared to your room, but there was a lot of people that came to the dungeon and didn't last a day or they'd even leave half the practice. Was there a lot of guys like that that came for tryouts at your gym and were kind of in over their heads?
Oh, sure. I mean, there were a lot of professional fighters that would show up and, 2 or 3 days into it would pick their duffel bag up halfway through practice to leave. And, the entire team would say, if you walk out that door, you can't ever come back. And some guys would put their bag down and stick it out. But you can't control somebody else's decision. So, but I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was pretty athletic when I was younger, but I don't know if I would be cut out back then to be able to do the things that pro wrestlers are doing. You know what I mean? I've always been amazed with the things that pro wrestlers can do. And like I say, the pounding that they can take, and certainly not going off the top rope and all the other crazy shit that they've done, cage matches and everything else. I really don't think I was capable of doing those types of things. You know what I mean? So I can see why people would bail in the dungeon setting and just walk out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I do have to say, I just did grappling training at TriStar for a while, which was kind of it was during the time George St. Pierre was there, and just the satisfaction you get after the
Yeah.
type of practices you're talking about, that's the ultimate high. Like just leaving the room and just knowing that you've put every inch of your energy into fighting because you have to, otherwise you're gonna get your ass kicked. I just remember I was driving 2 hours to go there, and it was like it was a high the whole drive back. So I can imagine um, what a great atmosphere it must have been for the people that stuck it out in your gym back in those days.
Yeah. I mean, if you stick around, you're going to get good. You have no choice. You're just going to get good. That's the way it is. I remember because I was married to a lady from Montreal, a French Canadian girl. So we went there quite often to visit her family. And I used to teach seminars at TriStar, actually. So great group of people.
And that's definitely the city with the most beautiful women in Canada, in my opinion, by far, Montreal. For anyone that's never been there. Oh, it looks like we may have lost Pat. We'll see if we can get him back. Well, he's gone. Let me just share his. He's gonna be back. Let's look at his Miletich fighting system training page here. I wanted to ask him where we could get these supplements that he was talking about, and I was right about to ask that because the pre-workout that naturally works on the mitochondria sounds very interesting. Oh, areas.
Sorry about that.
No problem. I was just looking over your website here. I was trying to find where we could get some of those supplements
Yeah.
you're
So
talking about.
we'll have, for anybody that wants to grow real food, badass food, they can go to soilsaviors.org. That's saviors.org. And then our website for the supplements, because we're rebranding, the website for the supplements will be, when it's up, CELL, cellsaviors.org. So for anybody in the future that listens to this, the website's going to be up, probably in, safely in a couple of weeks. That line of products will be out soon. So, yeah, so people can pull up Soil Saviors, and that converts all synthetics, heavy metals, even we've got data on forever chemicals, and now radiation contamination being converted into beneficial nutrients. So, nope, soilsaviors.org.
Oh, this is .com. Okay.
That's my other website that's not even active anymore.
Okay. I'll
Yeah, go to check out soilsaviors.org, ORG,
It
pull that up.
redirected me for some reason, but I'll pull it back up here.
Unless they're,
Uh,
if you type in org, soilsaviors.org, it should pull up.
Is there, there's an S after savior. Okay,
Save
there it is.
yours. Save
Yeah, there we
yours.
are. Okay, there we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested to try your supplements because, as I said, I've been doing this NAD cell stuff, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's completely rejuvenated my body, and that's like there's no side effects to that either, but it's extremely expensive. So I'm hoping your supplements,
Yeah,
your
no,
pre-workouts.
our supplements are very reasonable, and your endurance. Look, take your experience now with NAD, and then when you start taking cell saviors, the fulvic acid and the soil-borne collection of probiotics, and you get started on that. You tell me, you'll be able to tell the massive difference in your endurance. You push yourself as hard as you want, and you tell me what happens.
Yeah, because I'm back doing 2-a-days, 6.5 days a week. Like I'm having so much fun in my workouts. It's hard for me to even take half a day off because I'm completely rejuvenated. So I'll definitely give it a shot. I'll keep an eye out and follow you for that. I'll actually contact you when the stuff is out and see if maybe you can recommend me.
Yeah. And so, as far as the website that we're looking at now with soilsaviors.org, the whole idea is, number one, to grow nutrient dense food, which we're not getting out of our grocery stores. But also, our environment is what's making us sick, right? So when we're surrounded by and inundated by synthetic chemicals, the pesticide, herbicide, fungicides, and the manufacturing chemicals and pharmaceuticals and everything else that's in our water, our food, and our air, we're seeing, just massive dysfunction in the human organism, right? And so being able to control your environment. I mean, there's people obviously across the country that are treating their lawns, their gardens, their orchards, all their hunting land, their hunting food plots, all of these things to control their environment, which then assists them with getting healthy, right? Because even the allopathic medical world says that 90% of all human illness comes from our environment, which is our food, our water, our air, and whatever we're putting in our mouth or soaking in through our skin or breathing. That's what's causing you dysfunction, period.
Now I'm reading, I'm just saying this is a joke, but is this some type of cult? The Ministry of Soil, and I'm not laughing at you because you can probably still kick my ass.
So a private association allows us to conduct business with people in the private, right?
Okay.
That's very important for people to understand that agreement keeps our relationship in private, so that anyone it eliminates a lot of the people who are kind of the normies walking around ingesting garbage food and taking garbage vitamin minerals and things like that. This is for higher intellect people that are much more consciously aware of what's really taking place in the world. We'll leave it at that.
Very interesting. So who are these other two gentlemen? You guys are all very well dressed here. That's the best outfit I've ever seen you in. I'm used to seeing you in MMA stuff. But
so Dr. Will Spencer, who's one of, if not the probably most educated guys in soil to human health. And then the other gentleman in the gray suit is Nick Spahn, who is a guy that was a professional fighter, trained underneath me. He was undefeated as a fighter, but also has several degrees and a master's degree, and then agriculture finance. And then also he's a mindset coach and world-class hypnotist that runs mindset programs in Las Vegas, big events down in Las Vegas and other places around the world. So as far as from soil to human health, you've got things pretty well covered. And then we've got a team of other people, a true world-class expert as well, probably he's kind of the wizard behind the scenes in a lot of the things that we do. A gentleman out of New Mexico, Steve Moore, and then there's other team members as well. So we've got a lot of experience in terms of soil to human health.
As a human health expert, I'm sure you've heard of this supplement. It's really popular with pro wrestlers these days. I don't know about MMA fighters, but what are your thoughts on Kratom?
Kratom originally comes from a natural plant-derived substance. I believe that there's some Kratoms that are synthesized. I would strongly advise people maybe to do a lot of research before they put a synthesized product in their body. If you're going to do any substance, I would advise them to do the actual plant, and a plant that is grown with natural inputs, not synthetic inputs. So if we look at, for instance, berries and fruits and some vegetables that have antioxidant properties, antioxidants are known to remove heavy metals and synthetics out of the cells and also repair damaged DNA. People can do research on this if they want to go check for themselves. If those berries and fruits are grown with synthetic chemicals, the antioxidant properties are greatly diminished by those synthetic chemicals because the plants are not real. They don't have real nutrients, so they don't have immune function. They can't protect themselves from pests like bugs eating them, right? So how do you think the immune system of a plant being destroyed by growing it with synthetic chemicals is going to transfer into some form of immune function in you? It's not going to happen. That's not how it works. So if they're going to use Kratom, try to make sure that they stick with the purest form. I've never tried Kratom. I don't use it. I'm not going to advise people one way or the other on whether they should or should not use it.
Yeah, and I can tell people I've tried a few kinds, and it seems I'm in Kansas right now, and whatever the law is about selling it, they can't actually tell you what it does. They said we're not legally allowed to advise you what it does, but some of them will put you to sleep, and some of them will give you a great workout and numb your pain. So you really want, I would not suggest taking any of them before driving.
Well, see, the whole idea behind putting good things into your body, inflammation is what that drives all illness. So you can't have high blood pressure without inflammation. You can't have respiratory problems without inflammation. You can't have joint pain without inflammation, right? So the things that are causing the inflammation, which are the synthetics and heavy metals from the environment, are what you want to remove. So I don't want to numb your pain. I want to remove what's causing your pain. And so the best way to explain it is this. If you're walking down the street with a rock in your shoe and you're limping because it's tearing your foot up, are you going to stop at a 7-Eleven and buy some ibuprofen, or are you going to take the rock out of your shoe?
Yeah, you're going to take the rock out of your shoe, of course.
Right. So you just think about the things that I advise people to use and that, our team puts out on the market are the substances that take the rock out of your shoe. They remove the things that cause the inflammation within the body.
Very good. Looking forward to trying them. Gibb67 wants to know, who is the roughest, toughest person you've ever seen? This could go MMA or anything, and you've seen a lot.
Yeah, I've run across a lot of really, really scary characters.
Your book is great, by the way. I just got to throw that in. If you want to know how rough and tough Pat is, read his book where it talks about his early days of fighting.
Well, there's a volume 2 that's going to come out. That's going to be, probably in a year or so. And that one it'll go a lot deeper into a lot of stuff, but, a lot of rough, tough people. I mean, I fought a lot of tough people. Jason Nicholson from Oklahoma, who was 220 pounds when I fought him, was a real good high school wrestler out of Oklahoma, but he was also the number one ranked contender in the cruiserweight division of boxing, Cherokee descent out of Oklahoma. That guy was pretty tough character. But the guy's in my hometown. Bettendorf, Iowa, which was a conveyor belt into Division I athletics. I was like the 30th toughest guy in Bettendorf, Iowa, which was like 30,000 people. I mean, it was just the Quad Cities, Iowa, Illinois Quad Cities was always a hotbed for some pretty rough characters.
Oh yeah, and it still is. I've driven through, or actually, I've been to Iowa numerous times to attend the Dan Gable Hall of Fame, and you see a lot of cauliflowered ears everywhere, and you can tell in the bars that people are just a little bit more likely to fight than in some of the other cities that.
Well, I mean, what do you do? I mean, that's why great wrestlers come out of the Midwest. It's like when you're done harvesting all of the crops and everything's put in the barns, and the only thing that you're doing is working on equipment to get it ready for the next spring. What do you do where there's no mountains? You can't ski. There's hockey was never big in the Midwest down here. What do you do in the winter? Well, I guess you beat each other up, right? That's what you do. You go inside and you beat each other up.
What junior college did you attend?
I went to Sioux Empire, and I left. My mom got had another heart attack, and she had to retire from nursing. So I left Kirkwood in Cedar Rapids, and went back home and helped my mom, and had 3 jobs: pouring concrete during the day, and then bartending at a couple different places, bouncing, security work at night, and then I would train for fights, and I would quit one job at a time as I got better and got paid more, and then started my own gym, of course, and started making a living doing that. I was able to then move away from all of that stuff. So.
Someone wanted me to ask you if you've ever heard of Haku, the supposed toughest wrestler of all time. He's got all these legendary stories about him, but I don't know if you've heard of the myth of Haku or not.
Wait a minute. What era? Where? Like, how long ago was that?
He's the '80s era.
Yeah, I remember. I remember him.
But I mean, he did sumo, but I don't think he ever fought professionally. So if you haven't actually met him or grappled with him, it'd be hard for you to
I've not met him. I mean, I've grappled with guys who were not even professional fighters who would rip your arms off. There was a lot of guys that were, for God's sakes, insurance agents, or a professor at a local university, or a police officer, or these types of people, professionals in their own endeavors in life, who you'd grapple with them and just they could run through the best professional fighters in the world.
Yeah, and he was known to rip eyes out in these street fights and bites, which I mean that doesn't necessarily qualify you as a good MMA fighter, although there's no doubt that you probably wouldn't want to mess with him if all the wrestlers seem to agree that he's the toughest. I've wrestled him. He has extra thick hands, and his head is actually quite thick. So I could see.
Yeah, so he's of what, Samoan descent?
Tongan, yeah. So
dude, I don't mess with anyone of those descents. No, I'm just happy I can outrun them.
At last, or actually, I got 2 more quick questions. I am interviewing Tank Abbott tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to ask you, because I guess he only just saw the very first interview you did with me where you told the airport story, and he just wanted me to ask you, has anything changed with you and him over the years?
You know what, dude? I love Tank. He and I did not get along back in the day. I have no ill feelings toward Tank at all. I really don't. So. Tank's a legend. He did a lot of amazing things in the cage, and put a lot of people to sleep. So, he's a legend. I have nothing bad to say about Tank.
Yeah, I figured that time as a way of healing all wounds. And finally, you mentioned a couple times here you've been a lot in the Middle East. I was just wondering a few quick things, like what's the craziest thing you saw over there, and what are your thoughts on everything that just happened there? And do you think it's over now, or do you think, at least for the meantime?
Yeah, 2. So you got 2 questions there. Number one, the people can look up the Holy Grail of MMA, which took place in Kuwait, 8-man tournament. There were some pretty scary. Barkalov and another Russian. Barkalov was Chechen. You had Carlos Newton, you had Jose Pelelandi, you had Matt Hughes, you had Dave Monet, and it was an 8-man tournament. I believe it was a 180-pound limit. It was put on by the Sheikh and his sons of Kuwait. They picked us up in a convoy of brand new Land Cruisers, Range Rovers. I don't know, $120,000 Range Rovers. Picked myself and my entire camp up. Matt Hughes, Dave Monet, our manager Monty Cox, and some other guys at the airport, and drove literally 120 miles an hour back to the hotel. It was bizarre. We had a convoy of security detail, all kinds of. They really gave us basically the royal treatment. But they had hired a Syrian gentleman to do the promoting, who, when we did the fighters meeting, he said there was not going to be a weigh-in, and that they didn't have a scale anyway. And because Barkalov and then another guy that was fighting an alternate fight, Barkalov was huge, and the other guy was even bigger, was never going to make 185 or whatever the weight cut was. And so during the fighters meeting, Dave Monet actually brought a digital scale for his weight cut. So I said, we're going to get the scale and we're going to do a weigh-in. And the Russians jumped up in front of the doors to leave the convention room at the hotel. Like we were going to fight over a scale because they were trying to protect their guys. And I turned to the Syrian and I said, if we don't do a weigh-in, we're getting back on a plane and we're leaving and your tournament's done. And so he had no choice. So we did the weigh-in. Barkalov and the other Russian alternate were both way overweight. So they were forced to cut weight, and we watched them weigh back in and make weight. Number one, that set the tone for the whole thing. We had several meetings with the Sheikh's sons at their hotel, and to kind of discuss the situation with what was going on with the Chechens and the Russians. And the Syrian had kind of set up the tournament for Barkalov to win. And I can get to that. But so anyway, the tournament, Jose Pelelandi knocked out Matt Hughes, I think, right at the end of the first 5-minute period. Jose Pelelandi was an amazing athlete, amazing fighter. Matt got caught on one of his double legs and clipped with a knee and got knocked out. Dave Monet fought Carlos Newton first round, beat him. Barkalov crushed Jose Pelelandi in the second round. And Monet in the second round fought the other Russian, who, I'm telling you, the punches that were landing, it sounded like people clanking femur bones together off of cows. That's how hard these punches were hitting. It was an incredible fight. Dave won that fight. And then Barkalov and Dave Monet faced off in the championship fight. One side of the gym was all royal sheikhs and their families on couches on kind of a grandstand setup. And then the other side of the gymnasium was a SEAL team that came to watch us fight, and they were sitting on wood bleachers on the other side. And so Monet said to me, he goes, "Pat, how do I even beat this guy?" And I said, "Look," and I knew what kind of daunting task Dave had ahead of him, because Barkalov at the time was one of the most terrifying fighters on the planet. So anyway, I said, "Listen, Dave," I said, you've got to be ready for, the guy throws some really blistering strikes. I said, cover up, roll with them, do the best you can to deal with the heat. And then right when he finishes, his head never moves, fire back as hard as you can, and his head's not going to move. Just let your shit go and you'll land. And so that's what Dave did. And Dave ended up winning a decision. It was a very close fight. Barkalov got a point taken from him by John McCarthy, who was the referee. And Barkalov lost the fight. Monet won. And while the Sheikh was giving Monet his gold belt and his big giant check, the Chechens stormed the cage and were going to come after us. They were going to attack us in the cage. And the Navy SEAL team came in right behind them. And when the Russians and Chechens realized that the SEALs were in back of them and we were in front of them, that's when they changed their tune and left the cage, luckily. But meeting with the the Sheikh's sons the next day after the tournament, when Monty Cox did the math on how much they had been pilfered. They had millions of dollars stolen from them, basically by the Syrian promoter. They said that the Syrian was going to end up in a hole in the desert. And now I don't know what took place, but the Syrian never promoted the show again. That's all I know. But what's
you
going on?
Don't mess with people like that.
Yeah. So, but what's going on in the Middle East right now is, look, man, there's a lot of deception. There's a lot of distractions going on. I think that people really need to pay attention more to satellite systems that are above us. Pay very close attention to the camera systems everywhere, to their cell phones, to the biometric tracking, and to the 1,000-acre AI facilities that are going to have their own, well, from what I understand, potentially miniature nuclear power plants to power them. The digital world and the tracking and control of mankind is far more terrifying than kinetic warfare. So a lot of what we're seeing with the riots everywhere and the rocket attacks and a lot of stuff going on with Russia and Ukraine and a lot of stuff going on with Iran and Israel ultimately are a massive distraction for what they're building, the infrastructure, and people need to be paying very close attention because it's far more terrifying than bombs going off. If that, I hope that makes sense to people.
What do you think the drones were, just to follow up on that?
Oh, on the East Coast?
Yeah, because there was about 6 weeks.
Everything's a distraction. Unless you're hearing about the AI facilities and the cameras all over everywhere with facial recognition and picking up your cell phone and biometric tracking and the heavy metals nanotechnology being sprayed into the atmosphere, the atmospheric aerosol injection and things like that. Look, we have soil. We have tests for soil. We've watched the aluminum, the barium, and many other components, this nanometal content explode through the roof in the soil. So let me ask you a question. If you have a piece of metal laying out in the sun, what happens to that piece of metal in the sun?
Gets hot.
Gets hot. So when you're spraying billions and billions of pounds of nanotech metal all over the entire continent here in the United States, and I don't know if it's going on in Canada or in Europe. I think it's going on quite a bit in Europe as well. What do you think is going to happen to the soil when the sun hits it?
It's going to global warming, pretty much. Increase
all it takes is a little bit of common sense to see through a lot of this stuff, right? So excuses, reasons for doing things to take away your ability to travel. If they were so worried about petroleum destroying the earth, they wouldn't turn it into synthetic chemicals to put into your body or into your fields to grow food, right? So it just takes a little bit of common sense to shake off the scales that are over people's eyes and understand that we're in a very real situation, and there's a lot of misdirection and misinformation being spread, and that people need to just number one, if you can, grow your own food. And sorry, a big storm's coming.
Yeah, you're telling me. That's crazy. That's a really loud one.
Yeah. So yeah, everybody just needs, stand up for your children and do the common sense thing. If you can grow your own food with real nutrients, go to soilsaviors.org and apply that to your soil and your plants, your tomato plants, your cucumbers, your melons, whatever it is you're growing, and watch that explode into a Jurassic-sized garden and produce massive amounts of food for you and your family. And buy grass-fed beef. You should be eating beef, vegetables, and fruit that should be organically grown, and that's it. Eating seeds, nuts, and grains is harmful. That's eating the baby of the plant. The plants can't run from the predator. They put oxalates and a lot of other chemicals into their seeds to protect them from predators. So when you're eating those things, they're doing damage to your body. So
what about fish?
The oceans, the seas are the healthiest places on the planet. So yes, you eat fish. They say there's mercury content and things like that. There may be some of that in certain areas where there's manufacturing chemicals being dumped into the ocean or things like that. But generally, don't buy farmed fish. That's really wise. Tilapia are used to clean up like toxic garbage. So try to buy wild caught fish and those types of animals from the sea anyway.
And your screen is crystal clear now that we're about to end this interview, but at least we got all your audio. But it's obviously it was bad probably because of the storm. But very interesting. I really appreciate all the information you shared with us. I'll definitely be following up with you on those supplements. And you have Shoot Pro Wrestling coming soon. I'll let you plug everything else and send us off. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, Shoot Pro Wrestling coming very soon. We've got some twists that are going to really impress and surprise a lot of people. People can follow me on Soil Savior 1 on Instagram with the number 1, Soil Savior 1 on Instagram, and then PJ Miletich on Facebook.